Far Cry 2 is an open-world first-person shooter set in an unspecific Central African nation currently in a state of civil war. You pick between 9 different characters to play as and set out to kill a man named the Jackal, who is arming both sides of the civil war. This overarching story is amusing to watch, but it's by no means what you will remember from Far Cry 2, as the pacing is off and the voice acting isn't great.
You're good at your job, better than the other men I've hired. The AF alert is getting very strong thanks to you. That's good.
What Dr. Kagumbi's trying to tell you is that we've got a job and we're looking for a freelancer to take it. Someone like you, China.
Now, I love Far Cry 2. I think it's a brilliant game, and that being said, most people I know who played it remember it being a complete bore. And honestly, I don't blame them. When I first played this game all those years ago, I also thought it was a pretty awfully designed game. That being said, I did like how the game gave you a variety of ways to approach each mission. Because each mission usually consists of one objective, Far Cry 2 lets you approach that objective in a multitude of ways. If you want to run and gun your way through, go for it. If you want to kick back and snipe everyone down before entering an area, you can do that too. The game rarely forces you into situations where you don't have time to plan your attack, which is pretty refreshing for a latest generation shooter. The combat itself in Far Cry 2 actually has a lot more depth to it than what meets the eye. It has a lot of mechanics in it that make you want to make your own fun. Far Cry 2 features a fire system which can surround your enemies and force them out of cover, which can mix up scenarios a fair bit. Most combat areas are very well designed and they let you approach situations from multiple angles. And they each have different environmental elements to them, like turrets, vehicles, explosives, ammunition caches, and first aid kits. This coupled with some interesting AI reactions, weather effects that affect both the enemies and the player's visibility, the use of foliage as cover, destructive environments, the fire system, the gun degrading system, and the ability to buy, pick, upgrade, and choose a multitude of varied and interesting weapons, gives the game a lot of true depth in terms of providing the player with the ability to use tactics and/or make their own fun. The problem is that playing Far Cry 2 purely to create some fun, unscripted scenarios gets old pretty fast due to a lot of the design issues I mentioned earlier getting in your way. Far Cry 2 also features a buddy system where you can do missions disguised as favors for a bunch of your in-game friends, and in return they'll save you when you die occasionally. It's a neat idea, but ultimately it's pretty inconsequential due to the fact that you can just load a quick save whenever you die, which is faster and easier. I did like how unscripted these buddies were, as they could die during combat, and you did need syringes to save them. This sprouts up some interesting moral dilemmas, because if you merely had one syringe that you could use to save your friend, you might need it to save yourself. It's actually a really cool concept, but unfortunately buddies aren't needed due to the ability to quick save when you die. And the buddies don't really have enough character to make the player care about them at all. I did like how when you chose to do a faction mission, your buddies often gave you an alternate way of doing this mission. This gave you some cool options in how you did missions, and it just added to the amount of ways you can approach different objectives in Far Cry 2.
You around? Meet me half a click south of town, west side of the river.
So despite some fun times and cool ideas, I found Far Cry 2 left a pretty bad taste in my mouth due simply to how repetitive it was, and it had some seemingly awful design choices. That's what I thought way back in 2008 when I first bought it and played it. So why did I say I love Far Cry 2? What completely changed my mind about this game? Last year I decided to play Far Cry 2 with self-imposed permadeath. What is permadeath, you ask? Well, I'll tell you. Permadeath is where you delete your saves if you die. So if you want to keep playing after you die, you have to start the entire game from the beginning. So now when I play this game and I die, I delete my save. I also don't let myself load a save if something bad happens and I don't die. I just have to go on with each consequence, sort of like in real life. Now you wouldn't think that playing Far Cry 2 in permadeath would make it any better, but my word it does. Suddenly, the player's focus has completely shifted from trying to find fun things to do to simply surviving. Suddenly the buddy system has become essential to survival instead of just some useless addition. Suddenly the unscripted moral dilemmas in the buddy system have become real. Suddenly all your choices and their consequences truly matter. The game suddenly becomes an extremely intense experience instead of a bore with potential. Playing in permadeath, your approach to combat situations is a lot more delicate and a lot more exciting. Planning before missions is always essential, and you'll find that you'll start running through possible scenarios for your plan going wrong in your head. You'll start creating backup plans with the mechanics and environments the game gives you. For example, you could try and find a nice place to snipe your enemies, but if things go haywire, say your gun jams on you or an enemy approaches from behind, you'll make sure your vehicle is parked in a good spot to ambush your enemies with its turret. The fact that the game forces you to think and prepare for situations actually makes it feel a lot more like you're surviving. I think that for creating the feeling of survival, you must make the player feel crafty. You must make the player feel like he or she is coming up with ways to survive, and Far Cry 2 does exactly that. Notice that the war-torn African setting also really reinforces this sense of survival. And I hadn't mentioned it earlier, but this game has an extremely unique atmosphere to it, which feels very immersive and realistic. The music, sound effects, and visuals are all very well done. Basically, playing Far Cry 2 in permadeath makes a lot of the seemingly stupid design choices make a lot of sense. The respawning guards add to the intensity immensely, as you never feel safe. The routes you take whilst travelling are now important, the buddy system is now useful, and the consequences now have true meaning to them. That's not to say the game is suddenly flawless. The stealth mechanics are still broken, the AI can do some stupid, unrealistic things, and the blurring of the screen after sprinting makes me feel pretty sick. But complaints like these seem pretty trivial after playing on permadeath. It just becomes such a unique experience that I believe absolutely everybody should at least try, even if you hated Far Cry 2 the first time around. You'll often find that every time you die is because of overconfidence, which I think is kind of interesting. One last thing I'd like to mention is how cool and varied all the weapons in this game are, and I liked how you unlocked them as you played, which kept the game from getting too repetitive. Along with the standard pistols, automatic weapons, and shotguns, this game includes interesting weapons such as flamethrowers, flare guns, explosive crossbows, and rocket launchers. These weapons are extremely fun to use, and they can change up your tactics quite a bit as they create a lot of noise and fire. The fact that you can upgrade all weapons and even buy some personal upgrades is also really cool, and there's always something for you to spend your diamonds on. And if you haven't played Far Cry 2 before and want to give permadeath a try, I'd actually recommend playing it without it for an hour or two, just normally so you know what you're doing when you do play it on permadeath. My survival tip is to get a sniper as soon as possible, and never ever drive a car without a turret. Good luck, and thanks for watching.